You see where your business can go. To get there, you may need
another 10 trucks.
At Century Insurance, we put more than 115 years of industry experience to work to help protect you as you
launch a new delivery service
or
expand into a new region
and reach your business goals. Century, right by you. Property and casualty coverages and underwritten and safety services are provided by a member of the Century Insurance Group, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. For a complete listing of companies, visit century.com. Policies, coverages, benefits, and discounts are not available in all states. See policy for complete coverage details.
High Five Casino lets you play your favorite slot and live table games like blackjack with the chance to redeem for real cash prizes. High Five Casino has a giant selection of over 1,200 games, including hundreds of exclusive games only found on High Five Casino. It's always free to play, and free coins are given out every 4 hours. Ready to have your own High Five moment? Visit highfivecasino.com. That's high, the number 5, casino.com. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited by law, must be 21 years or older. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thank you for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, a man that needs no introduction at all because, yeah, he's kind of here every week. The Captain.
Do we have a beer of the week?
We do. We got another one for Yaya 23's wish list here. This week, Captain, we got one of my favorite brewing companies, Zaftig Brewing, out of Columbus, Ohio. They claim Worthington, but that's really just North Columbus, Ohio. This week, we're drinking Juicy Lucy by Zaftig. Garage grade, 4 1/4 bottle caps out of 5. Juicy Lucy is Zaftig's take on a traditional American IPA. This juicy bomb is a double dry hop, and they use Citra hops to give it a subtle, light, fruity cut to the hops. I love the new location. If you're in North Columbus, make sure you check them out. This beer this week is brought to us by Rachel in North Carolina, Claire in North Hollywood, California, Kirk in Thornton, Colorado, and Melinda in Baton Rouge. Thank you guys for chipping in and helping us fill up the fridge this week. And if you wish to buy us around, go to truecrimegarage.com and click on the donate button. Cheers.
And again, if you want to check out the store at True Crime Garage, you can do so, truecrimegarage.com. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at True Crime Garage.
That's enough of the business. Grab a chair, grab a beer, and let's talk some true crime. This is True Crime Garage. And this is the case of Christie Mullins. The summer of 1975. August 23rd. 14-year-old Christie Mullins accompanies her friend Carol Reeves to the Woolco department store. Carol had received a phone call from a disc jockey inviting her to a cheerleading contest in the parking lot of the department store. The girls had cut through the woods, arriving in the parking lot promptly at 1:45 p.m. The disc jockey that they're looking for is nowhere to be found, and they do not see a contest in sight. Christie Mullins sits on the guardrail. Carol Reeves, she goes into the department store to check to see what time it is. Just a few minutes later, Carol Reeves returns to the parking lot. Christie Mullins is gone. This week we have a very strange case. Strange indeed. The murder case of Christie Mullins. This takes place August 23, 1975 in North Columbus, Ohio. 14-year-old Christie Mullins is swimming at a pool at an apartment complex on Broadmeadows Boulevard when her 14-year-old friend Carol Reeves asked her to go to the shopping center around 1:30 p.m. Christie's friend Carol had received a call from somebody claiming that he was a radio disc jockey and he was having a contest. It was like a cheerleading contest. And the prize was going to be a pass to the upcoming Ohio State Fair. Christie and her friend Carol walked to the Woolco department store at the Graceland Shopping Center that was just blocks from her home. The disc jockey had said that the contest would take place in the parking lot at 1:45 p.m. The girls, they walked through the woods. There was a cut through. You could take a couple different paths from the apartment complex to the shopping center. When they arrived, they were unable to find the disc jockey, and they couldn't see any contest taking place. Carol, who was excited about the contest, decided that she would go into the Woolco store to double-check the time to make sure that they had arrived on time. When she comes back out, she's only in the store for a few minutes. She comes back out, and her friend Christie is gone. When she last saw Christie Mullins, Christie was sitting on the guardrail. They had a long stretch of guardrail there near the department store. She had sat there and she was waiting for her friend combing her hair, and just a few minutes go by and Carol comes back and Christie's gone. Carol waited about 20 minutes for Christie to return, and when she did not return, she went to the home of another friend of hers. Shortly after Christie disappeared, around 2:20 in the afternoon, a man named Henry Newell Jr., he's 23 years of age, of Kennewa Avenue. Now, Kennewa Avenue is about 3 blocks from the Graceland Shopping Center. He was walking in the woods with his wife Pamela and their 5-year-old daughter when he heard screams, and he ran to investigate where these screams were coming from, what was going on. When Newell arrived in the area of the screams, he saw a white man about 18 or 19 years old wearing cut-off shorts, no shirt, with long black hair, and he's swinging a 2x4 board, and he's beating something into the ground. Newell looked and saw that it was a woman or a girl that the man was beating with the large board. He saw the man strike the girl in the head about 3 or 4 times with vicious, deadly blows. The killer then saw Newell and took off running. He went running south in the woods to flee the area. Newell ran up to the girl who was laying on the ground, and he becomes emotional when the girl is laying there lifeless. And there is the board that she was being struck with is laying across her body. He picks up the board and he launches it into the woods. He throws it into the woods, and then he takes off his shirt. I mean, mind you, she's badly beaten in the head and the face, and he takes off his shirt and he covers her up. He covers up her head. Newell then went to the department store to call for help. He was very upset. He was pretty mad, and he and several store employees started searching the area behind the store, looking for the assailant. When police arrived at the shopping center, Henry Newell led them to Christie's body. Police said that later that evening, a woman came into the store and told police that she had seen a man earlier that matched the description of the man police were looking for. The assailant had been riding a bicycle and had rode past her home, which was just south of the shopping center. On Monday, August 25th, the Columbus Dispatch, which is the major local newspaper, featured the composite drawing of the suspect, the person believed to be Christie's killer. This prompted hundreds of calls to police. Most of them were calls coming from the north side of Columbus, and a lot of them near the Graceland Shopping Center. Detective Tom Jones said that more than a dozen calls seem especially promising. Jones said investigators have canvassed hundreds of homes in the area, apartments, buildings, and businesses in search of more eyewitnesses. Detective Jones was very confident that they would find other witnesses who had seen the killer before or after the murder took place. Jones also stated that in 15 years as a homicide detective in Columbus, that this was one of the most brutal beatings that he had ever seen. And although police at the time were pursuing several other theories, the strongest theory that they were going with was that the girl was forced into the woods by a man who wanted to molest her and then killed her when she struggled. That was the same that that Christie Mullins' father, same statement he would give to the newspaper that same day, that he believed that she wouldn't have gone into the woods with somebody willingly.
Well, her hands were tied as well, right?
Yes, there is one source that says that her hands were bound.
Yeah, with the telephone wire.
Now, the detectives, they were going on that theory, but they were also checking reports of molestations in the area, and they were doing what they were referring to as backtracking, saying that many times when someone is molested or assaulted, sexually assaulted, that they don't actually report it. But when they read in the paper that a 14-year-old girl is murdered, then they will come forward and say, such and such assaulted me, or so-and-so, we were involved in an altercation. These reports would come out later with hopes of helping solve a much more brutal crime. The next day, Tuesday, Officer Thomas Stroud, he's working foot patrol and traffic patrol down in the downtown area. He's at the corner of Town and 3rd Street, and he notices a face in the crowd. There's a group of about 10 people walking, and he notices a man in his 20s, and he approaches the man. And what stood out to him was the hair of the gentleman, the way that the hair kind of stood out from the face, and the length of it was almost exactly that of the composite drawing that he had seen in the dispatch the day before.
Kind of looks like a mullet, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a mullet, or like a slick back kind of Al Pacino kind of thing after you haven't combed it backward in a while, you know?
Somebody on Twitter said he looked like a redneck version of Jerry Seinfeld.
Okay. Anyway, Officer Stroud approaches the man and he asks the man for some identification. The man provided the officer with his draft card registration number. So for those of you that don't know, that's something I guess that people used to carry around with them back in 1975. Officer Stroud, he arrests the man on probable cause because he looks exactly like the composite drawing. And he says that the man went without incident. There was no resistance. Police identified the arrested man as 25-year-old Jack Carmen. Police take Jack down to the police department. They're going to call in Henry Newell Jr., who had seen the attack take place. And he brings his wife with him, and they conduct an identification lineup. Now, him and his wife would successfully pick Jack Carmen out of the police lineup. After the positive ID is made, police sit down with Jack and they put him through some questioning for about 6 hours. During the course of that questioning, Jack Carmen admits to the rape and killing of 14-year-old Christie Mullins. Detective Thomas Strasburg would talk with media after the questioning and after the confession, and he would tell the newspaper that Jack Carmen is in very, very poor mental condition. He also does not have the ability to read or write. Jack was living at the Volunteers of America dormitory at 379 West Broad Street. Jack also does not drive a car. Detective Strasburg would go on to say that Jack Carmen, while he did confess to the rape and killing of Christie Mullins, that Jack was uncertain why he would have been at the Graceland Shopping Center. He said that he was unsure how he happened to get there, but he may have gone there to buy a shirt and or some pants. And then he would go on to say that he was also uncertain what he did after the murder itself, other than the fact that he knew that he stayed in the Columbus area. He said that most likely after he killed her, he probably got on a bus and headed back to the downtown Columbus area. Police trying to corroborate Jack Carmen's confession, they announced that they were looking and trying to find a bus driver, a COTA bus driver, who might have seen Jack Carmen or had noticed a shirtless man wearing cut-off jeans that could have had blood specks on their cut-off jeans. Now, they also would go on to say that there's a possibility because she was beat to death with a board that the blood spots would be so small that could have gone unnoticed by a local bus driver. Police did recover more than one pair of shorts from a rag container at the Volunteers of America dormitory where Jack Carmen was staying. They couldn't confirm if they were Jack's shorts or not, but they did have some stains on them, and they had sent them off to a chemist to be tested, DNA tested. Well, not DNA at the time, but they wanted to test to see if they were human blood on the shorts. I want to circle back to the phone call real quick, Captain. Remember the phone call that the girl received from the disc jockey asking about could you come down to the cheerleading contest? We're giving away passes to the Ohio State Fair.
It's kind of a weird contest for a radio station to have.
Yeah, but the police were using that as their lead. That was their lead until the description of the man went out and somebody had found a guy that looked exactly like the description.
Uh-huh.
Well, after they arrest Jack Carmen, they're going to... Well, let's talk about the phone call real quick, okay?
Yeah.
So, a little more detail about the phone call. The phone call was actually answered by Christie Mullins' friend's mother. Now, that was Carol Reeves, is Christie's friend. So, the phone call was answered by Carol Reeves' mother, and she said that the caller did ask for Carol by name. Now, Carol would go on to say that the man spoke with an Appalachian accent, and she did not recognize the man's voice, nor did she have any idea who the caller was, other than she believed he was who he said he was, a disc jockey with a local radio station.
Yeah, wasn't there some speculation, too, that there was actually calls earlier that week?
Yeah, there was, and that's why I had to circle back to the phone call, because after the arrest of Jack Carmen, police released a statement to the media that phone call that it was simply a fluke that Jack Carmen, this maniac killer, ended up in the same location where these two girls were. Because they had went on this prank phone call, what the police are now deeming as a prank phone call.
Right.
And he just happened to be in the area, and he happened to grab Christie Mullins and pull her into the woods.
Even though that there was phone calls made earlier that week.
Correct. Yes, the authorities
so
did
this is
have
a bunch of fluke phone calls.
Yeah, there were several of these phone calls, and they were all made in that same area. These were all North Side girls who had called into police and told them that they had received similar phone calls that same week.
Which is very similar, like we were saying earlier, outside of the garage to the Amy Mihalovic case.
After the announcement of Jack Carmen's arrest, his former foster parents come out and they start talking to the newspapers. And they are saying, his mental state, he's at the level of a child. And not only that, they don't believe that he could have done this. Now, it's typical that family members don't believe that a loved one, is responsible for a heinous crime like this. I mean, this is somebody that was being charged with beating a girl to death after raping her.
Right, he's mentally handicapped.
Extremely mentally handicapped. He doesn't drive, he doesn't read, he doesn't write. But what the foster parents would go on to say is that Jack would kind of do anything you told him to. That he would also, you could lead him anywhere. When he was younger, if he did something and the foster father said, "Jack, did you do this?" he would immediately confess whether it was something he did or not.
Right.
And then just minutes later, the foster father would say, "No, Jack, you didn't do it." And then he would just agree. Yes, I did it. And then minutes later, no, I didn't.
Right.
And not only that, they said that he never hurt anybody. They actually believed that a small child could probably overpower Jack because he wouldn't understand the situation. He wouldn't understand that there was a struggle or a fight going on. And furthermore, the police would come back to media and say, "No, that's impossible. We know this guy did it because he led us to the crime scene. He led us to where the body was found." Now, the foster parents would come out shortly afterwards and say, "That's impossible. We believe that the police must have walked Jack there and pointed to the spot and said, "This is where this took place."
Or is this the place? And
Yeah.
then he disagreed.
Yeah, and he would just agree. The other thing that the foster parents were curious about was Jack had admitted to raping Christie Mullins. Well, there's a lot of contradiction here because an autopsy that was conducted, they could not confirm that she was raped. Now, she was found, her pants were unzipped, and her top was pulled up. But other than that, they couldn't find any evidence of a rape or sexual assault.
But the top could have came up during the actual beating part.
Correct. Or there could have been an attempted rape that was never successful that ended up in the demise of Christie Mullins. The foster parents would go on to say that, yeah, Jack confessed to raping Christie, but would somebody please ask Jack what the word rape means? Because we guarantee he doesn't even know what that word means.
Right.
I mean, how can you confess to something that you don't even know the definition of it?
Yeah, so they're leading this guy, and he confesses to it, and then they're going to take him to trial.
September 2nd, 1975, a grand jury indicts Jack Carmen for rape, kidnapping, and 3 various counts of murder in the death of Christie Mullins. And the very next day, on September 3rd, Jack Carmen, he agrees to a plea bargain in which charges are reduced to 1 count of aggravated murder in exchange for his guilty plea, and he's sentenced to life in prison. So let's review this real quick, Captain, because things are happening very fast here, right? Things are happening very fast to a guy that is mentally handicapped, and that we have already talked about might go along with whatever the group is telling him to do or go along with.
Yeah, hence the plea bargain.
Yeah, on August 23rd, Christie Mullins is killed. On August 26th, Jack Carmen's arrested. That's just 3 days later. On September 2nd, he's indicted for 3 counts of murder, and then on the 3rd, he pleads guilty to 1 count of murder. So this takes place all within the course of 11 days, from death to conviction. It's around this same time that workers at the Volunteers of America on West Broad Street, where the mentally disabled Jack Carmen lived, they start reporting that they had seen Jack that day and that he was at that location as late as 1:45 p.m. in the afternoon. Now, remember, we said Jack didn't drive a car. So he relied on Coda Bus to take him everywhere that he went.
And roughly the murder took place about 2:20, 2:25.
According to the eyewitness that had seen the girl being beat in the head, he said that around 2:20 he had seen Jack Carmen beating the girl in the woods. Well, that's a bit of a stretch. So it's 16 minutes by car with no traffic from that location on the west side of Columbus all the way up to the north side of Columbus. 16 minutes. So if they saw him at 1:45, that puts him there about 2:01. But now she wasn't just, she was taken from the side of the department store, brought into the woods. I mean, maybe by car, but anybody that's traveled by bus, they know that bus moves a lot slower than a car, and you got to stop and make all those different stops, right?
Well, what's interesting is, okay, they claim that they got there at 1:45. We don't know that for sure, right? We're approximating.
Correct.
That they get there at 1:45. It never states that she went and checked and, oh, by the way, it was 1:45. They were on time. I do think she was excited about the contest, so I think they were on time. But then she comes back 10 minutes later. So she would have. So you're trying to tell me that Christie Mullins would just be wandering off for no reason? It seems like there was that window of opportunity for somebody to lure. I can't speak today.
Lore. But the captain, I like the captain always adds 5 minutes to timelines because this
forwards and backwards.
Yeah, this is 1975. People aren't walking around with cell phones. Now, they do have wristwatches, obviously, but what you're saying here, if we add 5 minutes
I have a wristwatch on right now, and it's not working, so.
It's right twice a day.
Exactly.
So if we're saying by the captain's timeline that if they did arrive on time at 1:45, and if the friend Carol was in the department store for 10 minutes, she would have came back out at 1:55, maybe 2 o'clock at the latest, that means Jack Carmen would have had to have taken a car straight from the West Broad location all the way up to the Graceland Shopping Center.
Well, he wouldn't have taken a car. He would have taken a bus. But
exactly. But that's the only way, is what I'm saying, to get there in that amount of time. And
but
we
then
know that
when you go to the home, then you got to go back and forth. Okay, did he leave at 1:40 or did he leave at 1:50? Or is that this the last time they saw him and that he was actually just there the whole time?
These workers, as said, came forward saying that there's no way that he could have arrived in time to commit the murder. Now, not only that, there's people that start checking. The police didn't check this. The detectives did not check this. Mm-hmm. They just believed the confession. Now, these people start checking and they start signing petitions that he needs to be retried, that they need to do a more thorough investigation, because according to the bus schedule and according to the transit authority, there's no way that he could have made it from the west side of Columbus at 1:45 to be at that location at Graceland Shopping Center at 2:20 p.m.
Yeah, in 1975, it'd probably be a lot easier to make the drive. Traffic was probably less than it is now. But also, to me, it seems like the cops are more worried about closing the case than they are finding the truth. And I think that happens a lot in cases, and we really need to put pressure on the police to be looking for the truth, not just looking for closure.
If you're ever worried about the safety of your home and family, there's no better time to act than right now. Many True Crime Garage listeners have been using Simply Safe to protect their families and keep their homes safe for years now. But some of you still have not heeded the call. Right now, True Crime Garage listeners can get 60% off today just by visiting simplysafe.com/garage. Simply Safe is a new way to protect your home that stops intruders before they break into your home. Old school systems only take action once someone is already inside your home. That's too late. Simply Safe's Active Guard outdoor protection changes the game by preventing crime before it even happens. If someone's lurking around or acting suspiciously, those agents can see them in real time, talk to them directly, set off your spotlights, and even call the police before they've had a chance to break in. Plus, there are no long-term contracts, no cancellation fees, and it's all around $1 a day for all of this great protection. I love Simply Safe because it simply makes me feel safe. Don't let the name fool you, because the system, yes, it's simple to use. It's simple to operate. It's simple to install. However, it's not a simple system. No, this system is great. You can protect your home, protect the outside of your home, protect against break-ins, against smoke, CO, water, fire, and those porch pirates. You are going to love your Simply Safe system. Simply Safe is offering my listeners exclusive early access to their Black Friday sale. This week only, you can get 60% off any new system with a select professional monitoring plan. This is their best offer of the year. Head to simplysafe.com/garage. That's simplysafe.com/garage. There's no safe like Simply Safe. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Not to name names, but I have had mobile providers in the past that have a less than reliable service that I have paid much more than Mint Mobile. Like you, I was tired of complicated bills that included new fees and upcharges that made absolutely no sense. Mint Mobile is straight up. Great reliable service at a great and fair price. All Mint Mobile plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone number, and all of your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/TCG. That's mintmobile.com/TCG. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/TCG. $45 upfront payment required. equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Is your sock drawer looking like a crime scene? Refresh it with Bombas, the most comfortable socks in the history of feet. Bombas is the perfect holiday gift for your work bestie, cousin, or that super picky friend, because no one says no to the snug and great feeling of new socks. Don't be surprised if you end up keeping a few things for yourself, though, because Bombas uses the coziest fabrics. But my favorite thing Bombas makes is hands and feet down their slippers. They're designed with marshmallow-like memory foam and are all wrapped up in Sherpa. Once you put them on, you'll never want to wear real shoes again. Bombas has become my go-to for sock shopping. Bombas.com is where I go to get my socks. They're also my cheat code, because if you get the ankle socks, they're great for the gym. They're great for everyday use. You get the half ankle sock. That one is good enough for me to wear at a business casual event or a black tie event, and they look like dress socks, but they feel like performance socks. Super cozy. So ready to feel good and do good? Head over to bombas.com/truecrimegarage and use code truecrimegarage for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/truecrimegarage, code truecrimegarage at checkout. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. As your kids get older, some things about parenting get easier. Others don't. Like having that conversation about money. The fact is, kids won't really know how to manage money until they're actually in charge of it. That's where Greenlight can help. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families. Parents can send money to their kids and keep an eye on kids' spending and saving, while kids and teens build money confidence and a lifelong financial literacy skills. The Greenlight app also includes a chores feature, where you can set up a one-time or reoccurring chores customized to your family's needs and reward kids with an allowance for a job well done. I love the Greenlight app. My friends love Greenlight as well. Why? Because it's empowering and teaching your kids the true meaning of a dollar. How many times do we have to tell our kids, I'm not made of money? That's because they don't know about money. Greenlight is here to teach them and to help you. Remember, it's an app that's made for families, not just for the kid. So you can reward your kid and teach them about money. You can use this so they can spend it on things that they want to purchase, goals that they want to set for themselves. Maybe it's money that they earn through chores or from getting good grades or from birthdays and Christmas. The Greenlight app works for you. It's an app made for families. Sign up for Greenlight today at greenlight.com/garage. That's greenlight.com/garage. Greenlight.com/garage.
Well, let's think about some things that are going on in the world at this time period. So this is the summer of 75, and we had covered at the beginning of this season the Son of Sam. Well, the Son of Sam murders started taking place late July, mid to late July of the same summer. So New York City has got a maniac running around killing people. They haven't solved that crime. There's more victims. The victims are adding up. Okay. And then you have a 14-year-old girl in Columbus who was murdered. This is a well-populated area. It's Clintonville, Ohio, North Columbus. There's a lot of people there today. There was a lot of people back in 1975. This is a well-populated area. And all of a sudden they got a maniac on the loose that's killing kids in the woods, you know? And so
killed a kid, yeah.
Right. But this was on the front page of the major newspaper at the time, the Dispatch. Mm-hmm. And this was a crime that you're exactly right. The cops were very concerned about solving this. You saw the picture, you saw the composite drawing that they put in the newspaper. The guy looks like a maniac. He looks like somebody you'd be afraid of. And then you heard that he raped and beat a girl to death with a board.
Yeah, 2x4. So, yeah, but here, it goes back to my original thought, though, I understand that there's pressure to solve a case, But the pressure should never be to close a case or to solve a case or, to finish things. The pressure should always be to find the truth. And I think they just came across a guy that was mentally handicapped. I think they interrogated him. I think their tactics probably were questionable. And they got a confession out of a guy that didn't know what he was talking about.
Now, you have to sign a confession, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Jack Carmen couldn't write. The police said he couldn't read or write. So let me get this right. I'm going to have to write out your if I'm the officer, I have to write, and you're Jack Carmen.
Mm-hmm.
I have to write out the confession for you, right?
Right.
And I put a little X at the bottom and say, "Here, Jack, sign here." And not only did I write the confession for you, but you can't even read it to know if that's what you told me.
Correct. Right. And most of the time they'll just hand you a piece of paper and they go, just write down everything you know. They leave the room. A tactic that I've heard that detectives use often is they won't even read it. They'll just come back and say, I'm guessing there's some lies in here, so just rewrite it. So they had to write out the confession for him and probably put a X by it. So again, he can't read what they wrote. Now working in the banking industry, I dealt with a lot of mentally handicapped, and they would have a signature that they would sign. Mm-hmm. So that a lot of them could sign some kind of signature. So I'm assuming that Jack did that.
Yeah, I would guess that he signed. I mean, he had some identification with him. Usually that requires a signature as well. He's 25 years old. I'm sure that he had some kind of signature or a scribble that he used as a signature.
Whether it's a scribble or not, that's his signature.
Have you seen my signature? My signature is a scribble.
Yeah.
Is a scribble, and I'm no doctor. September 8th, this is just 5 days after the guilty plea. More than 70 people attend a meeting at Sharon Township Hall to question the police investigation. Shortly after the meeting, this is when they established the Justice for Jack Committee.
Yeah, and basically what this committee is doing, what everybody should have been doing from the get-go, is they're pushing the issue for, look, if he did it, fine, but let's get to the truth.
Let's review the other evidence, though, too. I mean, we talked about the timeline, that it was impossible for him to make it there.
It's highly unlikely.
Very unlikely. But the test of the shorts, nothing comes of that.
Right.
They couldn't even confirm that they were his shorts.
At the time, being 1975, they're probably looking for blood, and then just to see if the blood matches like her type of blood.
Yeah, or if it was even blood at all that had stained the shorts.
I wonder if it was jorts, jean shorts.
It was jean shorts. The
really?
cutoff. Yeah, cutoffs.
Old jorts.
The other evidence here is they couldn't find a bus driver. Remember, they had said...
Wait, hold on. If you're listening in your garage right now and you're drinking a nice brew, right?
Yeah.
And you look down and you're wearing jorts, just get up, take your jorts off, throw them in the trash, light them on fire. Just don't wear jorts.
Wait, no, I disagree. If you are in the garage drinking a beer and you look down and you're wearing jeans, I want you to stand up, take them off, get a pair of scissors, and cut them
into jorts
just above the knee, and then throw them in the trash.
Or send me your picture of your jorts on Instagram.
All right, got sidetracked there.
All right.
But on November 19th of the same year, a court-appointed attorney, Richard Addison, files a motion to set aside Carmen's guilty plea and conviction on grounds that Carmen is mentally incompetent.
Yeah, they gave him a new lawyer, technically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I find that interesting, and I think probably at this point, the police are starting to backpedal. Like, what are we doing? Or what we're doing morally correct?
And you know what? I have no evidence of this, but other than the fact that he did get a new attorney, I suspect the first attorney might have just told him to plead guilty. I mean, that's the gist of it, right?
Yeah, and the DA and everybody is connected. They all know each other. A lot of people play golf together. So who knows? It could have just been like, look, we have a mountain of evidence saying he did it. And then the attorney just said, okay, cool. But it was after the plea that they come out with an alibi. And I think if the defense attorney, the first one, knew about the alibi, they probably would have said, wait a second, what's going on here?
Well, keep in mind, everything was happening very fast. I mean, he was arrested on the 26th at the end of August, and the first couple days of September, he's pled guilty. So they're piecing this together here. And for this type of murder conviction...
I don't give a shit about fast, though.
But some time should have been spent on this.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't give a shit about fast. I give a shit about correct.
But you know what I do give a shit about? People coming together for the right reasons. Wearing jorts together and coming together for the right reasons.
Okay, yeah.
And you had those people, those 70 people that attended the meeting in Sharon Township, and you have the Lantern. Okay, that was the Ohio State newspaper, right?
Right.
The Lantern, there was a couple of gentlemen there.
This is a college newspaper.
Correct. College newspaper, a couple of reporters there, they start covering this story. And they're the ones that start voicing to the public that, hey, there's something going on here, that this guy has been wrongly convicted of this terrible crime.
And Clintonville is north of campus, so this really doesn't have anything to do with the campus area.
But it's a publication regardless. And then in late December of the same year, Columbus Monthly, which is a magazine today, I'm assuming it was a magazine back then as well, but they decide to cover the same story that the Lantern's covering. They bring in the same investigative journalist and have them release their story on a much larger scale.
So you said that's released in December. So that's, 3 months after the...
Correct. December 29th, Columbus Monthly released their January 1976 issue that covered the case and covered the story. So
then once he gets his new attorney, now they're set to go to an actual trial with a jury.
Well, what takes place is January 30th of 76, Jack Carmen's conviction is set aside and a competency hearing is ordered.
And what did they find during that competency hearing?
So it took a few months to figure this out, but in the end, in mid-May of that same year, a judge ruled that Carmen's civil rights were violated by the Columbus Police Department, and
that's based, I think, on the interrogation.
Yes, and here's what I like. I find this odd. You know, when they confess to a crime,
yeah.
You know, when you hear like this mentally handicapped person was stuck in a room for 6 hours, we were questioning him. No, 6 hours, that's an interrogation. I mean, questioning and interrogation, those are two different words, right?
Yes, they are. Captain Obvious.
But it's a way of skewing what you're actually doing, right?
Yeah, but you originally reported that they were questioning him for 6 hours. I wanted to just chime in and go, 6 hours is a long time.
That's an interrogation. Those were the words of the Columbus Police Department as given to the local newspaper at the time.
All right, so his civil rights are violated, and what else?
So the prosecutors appeal that ruling, and then Jack Carmen is ultimately granted a new trial. On December 19th, 1976, after a 6-day trial and 849 days behind bars, Jack Carmen is acquitted in a retrial and he's set free.
You're skipping over a lot of stuff.
Go ahead, Captain.
All right, so who do they call as their prime witness?
I don't know.
They call Henry Knoll. Henry H. Knoll Jr. And where do they find Henry Knoll at?
Is he in jail?
Yeah, he's in jail. Do you know what he's in jail for? He burnt down his own home. And so he burns down his own home and he's put in jail.
An accident, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, no, it was arson. And so they pull him out of jail and they bring him to the courtroom. And then the defense attorney basically combats everything he says, and the jury doesn't believe a damn word he says, and they actually believe Henry's responsible for the murder.
Mm-hmm. And that was the Christie Mullins family had believed that from the beginning. I mean, back in September of 75, when the local townspeople started getting together and questioning the guilt of Jack Carmen, her family flipped almost immediately and said, they didn't believe this Henry Newell story at all.
Yeah, but now what's weird about his story is, he's walking in the woods with his wife and his son, right? Or daughter. I can't remember.
It's their 5-year-old daughter.
Okay, so now you have to go against what Henry's saying. You got to go against what his wife is saying. And obviously, they were not going to question the 5-year-old.
Yeah, let's think about what he said. He said that him and his wife and daughter are walking through the woods. He hears some screams, and he decides he's going to run to investigate where those screams are coming from, right?
Run towards the danger.
Yep. He runs towards the danger. He sees a tall white man, shirtless white man in jorts with long black hair swinging a 2x4, which they actually said was probably only about 2 foot long. As a broken off or cut off board, and swinging this 2x4 and what he says at first he sees him beating something into the ground, and he looks down and it's a girl or a woman that he's hitting in the head. He sees the assailant hit this person in the head 3 or 4 times. He then says that the assailant turns and looks at him, and they looked each other in the eyes. And after this maniac had seen Henry Newell, he drops the board across the body of the girl, and he takes off running. Well, let's think about what Henry decides to do then, all right? He says, I'm emotional. I became overwhelmed with emotion, and I ran up to the girl. Now, he must have noticed that she was dead or beyond help at that point, right? Because he says in frustration, I picked up the board, I threw it into the woods, and I took off my shirt, and I put it over her head.
No, I could see myself removing the board from her body. I could see myself doing that. I could also see myself pulling off a piece of clothing if I knew she was passed away, if I knew she was deceased. I could see myself covering her face out of respect, or not wanting to see it, I guess. So to me, that's not super far-fetched. I think it's a clever story that he came up with at the time,
I think that it's a way to explain away my fingerprints on the board and why my shirt is covered in her blood.
Right.
And second of all, I think the act of covering her face with my shirt implies that he believes she was beyond help and that she was dead at the time that he ran up to her body. So let's think about this.
Right. If she's dead when I find her, then I couldn't have killed her.
And I'm a man in my young 20s, right?
You're not.
Well, no, Henry Newell is.
Okay.
I'm Henry Newell, right?
Okay.
In the woods, shirtless, and he was 23, I believe, at the time, and so his wife would have been about the same, approximate same age. So my wife and young daughter are in this woods somewhere. I just left them and ran towards the danger, and I chased away this maniac, this bloodthirsty maniac that just ran through the woods.
Right.
So, and I determined that the girl is dead.
But he doesn't have his weapon anymore. So, okay, keep going.
But what is my first reaction? I run to the department store and I call for help.
The Woolco.
Yeah. I guess everybody would react differently, so maybe I shouldn't read too much into this. But to me, my first thought would be, shit, this maniac's in this woods, and my wife and my daughter are in this woods too.
Right.
I don't know that I would flee the woods and search for help. I would want to help. That I'd probably be yelling for help, but I'd also be calling for my wife and my daughter to make sure that I'm there to protect them.
Well, yeah, but part of me thinks that if I saw that, I'd be sizing the guy up, and then I hate cardio, but I think part of me would have just what they say, fight or flight. I think I would have went towards the fight instead of staying with the body. But I guess also if you're coming up on somebody and you don't know if they're deceased or not, then maybe that hesitation, by the time you look up, the guy's already long gone.
Now, at least one eyewitness that was at the Woolco store when Henry Newell arrived there to call. He says he ran there to call for help, right?
Right.
One eyewitness says that he thought, or sorry, it never explained if it's a he or she, but they had thought that Henry looked to have become upset and angered when he was informed that the cops had been called. And it was after this time that him and several of the Woolco employees went outside of the department store to look for the killer, to look for the maniac.
All right, so Henry goes to Woolco to call the police, basically, or get help. He's trying to get help from the Woolco. That's hard to say.
Woolco.
Department store. He's trying. So maybe he's not trying to call the police. He's just trying to get help in general. But then you claim that somebody says he looks visibly upset once they say the cops are on their way.
Yes.
That's
and then it's after that that he goes outside and with some of the Woolco employees looking for the killer. Now, this is just one eyewitness's account. I mean, who knows? He could have been shaken up by what he had just seen, and he wasn't. It could have been whatever the reaction. It's just interesting to me that little tidbit was in the newspaper at the time. I do know that Noel and his wife, Pamela, they were questioned for a couple of hours after the incident. Now, a lot of that's probably just,
now you can say question because it was only a couple hours.
Yeah. And a lot of that's probably what did you see? What were you an eyewitness of?
Right.
Going over the description of the man. But here's one thing that you asked me earlier that was interesting. I kind of danced around it because I didn't want to go too much into it at the time. But you had asked, I had said that Noel and his wife had positively identified Jack Carmen as the man that they had seen in the woods. Mm-hmm. Well, here's some issues that I have with this, right? Okay, and you had asked, did they do the lineup at the same time? Did they ID him at the same time?
I don't know if that actually made it in after an edit, but
okay.
But yeah, that was my question: did they go in to do the identification of Jack Carmen together, or did they just do it separate? Because to me, I feel like legally you should do it separate, or it doesn't hold up in court.
Legally, you should do it separate, but let's also review his story. His story says that he ran ahead of his wife, and the killer ran off. And I guess maybe what we're missing, we don't know all the details because the police don't release every detail to the newspapers. But according to that story...
Well, how I wish they would, though.
Did his wife actually see the killer?
Or did she just see the back of him?
Or was she just going off of what Henry told her to say or what he said he saw? And here's the other thing. If they both, like you said, if they both ID'd them, Jack Carmen together, was she just going along with what whoever Henry pointed to?
Right. It's interesting. And then the other question to me was he the only one in the woods, or is she just lying about being in the woods altogether?
The thing here too is, yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here that took place in a very short period of time. There's that phone call. Did Henry Noel make that phone call to try to lure Christie's friend to the store near the woods? I mean, the woods back right up to the store and to that area.
Yeah, a lot of people believe once you look at this case that, what was Christie's friend's name again?
Carol Reeves.
So Carol gets phone calls probably earlier that week and then gets one that day. Again, like we said, kind of like the Amy Mahalovic case. So I think, when he said, oh, I'm a DJ and we're having this cheerleading contest, just meet me outside. And I think he thought, I'm going to get lucky and she's just going to come by herself and then I'm going to negotiate a situation where I can get her alone. But what happened? She brought a friend. And then I don't think whoever called her was expecting there to be two. And it just so happened that Christie decided to stay back instead of, hey, I'll just go in with you. She stayed back. And that was the killer's opportunity right there. Mm-hmm. And so really this the victim was supposed to not be Christie. It's that whole wrong place, wrong time thing.
Does the caller pretending to be a disc jockey pick the Woolco store or pick that parking lot because he knew that a girl that lived in that area would cut through the woods, and he could have been in the woods with her alone, watching her, following her, grab her, and as you said, now there's a friend there. Now there's two.
Yeah, that's the other speculation, is that the killer would have just called, meet me here, knowing where she lived. She'd have to cut through the woods, and he would have got her just in the woods to begin with. But since there was two girls there, it was not an opportune time. He could have just stayed back in the woods and didn't react until he saw her go into the Woolco, and then he had to act on Christie instead of her friend.
Now, after Jack Carmen is acquitted in December 19 of 1976, it's determined that Jack Carmen didn't even know Christie Mullins, that he had actually pled guilty to killing a girl that he had never seen before. And he spent 846 days in jail or prison because of that.
Yeah, and if you see some of the pictures just of Jack Carmen when they're arresting him, he just looks happy all the time. He looks just like he's happy to be there, happy to be talking to people.
He's smiling on his way into court. He's smiling on his way out of court. He doesn't understand what is happening, and it breaks my heart. I mean, the guy, he seems like what his foster parents said. Like, he's just a nice guy that wouldn't know to fight somebody because he doesn't understand the situation.
Yeah, and he's basically living in a shelter. Yeah,
they said that his foster parents, at his defense, they said that a 4-year-old could beat a 4 or 5-year-old kid could beat up Jack Carmen because he wouldn't understand the situation. And ask him what you said. You raped that girl. Ask him the definition of rape. Does he even know what that means? And this is terrible that somebody took advantage of this person. And I mean, had these people not come to his defense, the citizens came to his defense. These reporters came to his defense. Life in prison.
Yeah. But I think that's a problem with the justice system, is when you're pushing the issue of closing a case. There is pressure on these cops to close this case. And that's, I mean, it's a heinous murder. Two, it's a sophomore in high school. It's a 14-year-old girl, not a woman, just somebody just starting their life, and somebody beat her to death in the woods. I mean, there's pressure from the whole community, but God, you got to get this shit right.
Yeah,
you can't just be taking a guy that's mentally handicapped and just feeding him the answers and then going, look, at the end of the day, you're the only person that has to live with you. And you're going to tell me you're going to be able to look in the fucking mirror when you set down a guy that you knew was incapable of understanding what you're talking about, and you just get him to confess to this idea?
Well, there were some things working against the police. Obviously the
ethics.
Well, basic human decency is one thing. No, what I'm getting at, though, is they were put in a bit of a pickle. I mean, you have a eyewitness who's just lying. Okay. Mm-hmm. He says, I saw this maniac killer. He describes the killer. They make a composite drawing of this person. And
Mm-hmm.
not only that, typically you would put this guy through the ringer. You would say you saw the killing go down. You would put him through the ringer because he's very likely to be your number one suspect, right? But because he says that my wife and daughter are with me,
right.
Now all of a sudden you have to believe him. You don't have to, but that's what they did.
But he has an alibi.
Yeah. He has an alibi. And then second of all, they released the composite drawing. Now, here's one thing I will say. The composite drawing, Jack Carmen looks he's a dead ringer for the composite drawing.
I think the person that made the redneck Seinfeld joke was Mr. Do It or something on Twitter. I stole that joke from him. So
yeah, and no, I don't mean any verbal harm to Mr. Jack Carmen. I already said that that I feel terrible that this happened to him, but there's.
Okay.
This is 1975. When you hear that a girl is beat to death in the woods, an image comes in your mind when it's described that it was a white man with long black hair, and it was like just below the ears. It wasn't long black hair,
right?
And the composite drawing is just below the ears, and it's kind of.
But he's not really handicapped, so one, he probably doesn't have a lot of money to get a haircut.
he's got a wild look to him.
Yeah, well, but the other thing too is a lot of them don't understand how to shave. So when I was working in the bank and they come in every week and you got to help them out, you'd realize like they don't shave as often. I mean, the captain never shaved, but
you don't shave.
I stopped
often.
shaving when I was 20 years old. I was like, wait a second, I don't have to do this shit anymore. But no, and so what you're basically saying though is if you see him in some pictures, he just seems like this happy, cheerful guy that doesn't understand what's going on, and in other pictures, he does look like this psycho killer, you know.
Yeah, and that probably confused the police, because when you start, if you're investigating this and you start to maybe not believe Henry Knoll's account of what he saw.
Yeah, but here's what we do.
Then the very next day, within 24 hours, they pick somebody up that looks exactly like him, and you're going, what's the chances of that?
No.
That's 1 in a million.
But the problem is you got to change the way that we investigate murders, because here's what we do. If we're investigating, let's say, a drug cartel, right? Mm-hmm. You put somebody's name on the board, you put Jack Carmen's name on the board, and then you just keep going. You need to go find the next guy that he's connected to, right? Mm-hmm. And same way with the Henry Knoll. You go and you say, okay, now let's go dig more into him. But the way murders work is that you put these people on the board. And so what the police did was they put Henry Knoll on the board, and they said, well, Henry Knoll was the one that saw the eyewitness, right? Mm-hmm. And his wife and his kid were in the woods with him. So boom, alibi, cross his name off the list. Sorry, I just punched your mic. And they cross his name off the list. And then where do we get the eyewitness testimony and the deposit sketch? We get it from Henry Knoll. And then that sketch matches Jack Carmen. So now we just keep following that path. And so they follow that path, and guess what? It leads to a guy that agrees with everything you say. So I understand that point. You go, okay, well, obviously this looks like the guy that Henry saw, and Henry was with his wife, so therefore he couldn't have done it. So now let's just talk to this guy. Well, maybe they didn't even push too hard. It doesn't seem to me like they would have had to, but maybe it was going to take a while to actually. I mean, they could have said, did you do this? Yes. Did you do this? Yeah. And maybe his story was just all over the place because he was disagreeing to everything. And so they had to clean that up a little bit. And I think maybe they're not horrible people. Maybe they actually thought they were onto something until the people from the shelter come out and say, wait a second, he was here at least till 1:45.
Yeah, and where I think they really dropped the ball was just before that, because after after Jack Carmen is they positively ID'd by Knoll and his wife, and they take his confession. They're immediately telling the newspaper the next day, it was just a fluke that Jack Carmen was there. And what are their first statements to the newspaper? He's a very, very poor mental condition. And the next statement is he doesn't drive, and Jack Carmen doesn't know why he was at Graceland Shopping Center.
Right.
And he doesn't know where he went after the murder. He other than we know he stayed in Columbus. So he's saying, I guess if I was at Graceland Shopping Center, then I must have got on a bus and went back downtown. Well, so they were very quickly dismissing the phone call that Carol Reeves received. They're immediately saying, okay, well, this was just a prank that had nothing to do with the murder.
Again, putting things on a list and just crossing them off.
They're just checking it right off and saying, nope, that has nothing to do with it. But then furthermore, they don't even bother to... Remember, they said, we are looking for a COTA bus driver that would have seen this man taking a bus to or from the area before or after the murder.
Yeah, and
that bus driver never came forward.
Right, and if he's not driving, if he's getting around town, if he is at all, these bus drivers are going to start recognizing that they're patrons. So I don't know. It's like you said. I think it's pressure. I think it's unfair pressure. I mean, look, I like cops. I think there's a lot of great cops out there. I think there's a lot of amazing detectives. I think they're put into these high pressure situations to close these cases. And I think sometimes, because look, you're getting pressure from the whole community, but you're also getting pressure from the family. You know, and I do believe that the family, you know, because hindsight's 2020. So then after the fact, you go, well, yeah, we never believed that Jack was involved to begin with. I think once they saw Jack and they saw the sketch, I bet money that they're like, yep, that's the guy. But you know, you take a couple more steps and it's like, wait, this doesn't add up. Something's not right. So he's acquitted, and then Henry Knoll Jr. gets out of prison, and then what happens?
When does he get out of prison?
I'm not really for sure, because I don't think he spent that long of time in jail.
I knew that he was in prison, but I had a hard time tracking that down as well. And why did I wanted to know when he got out of prison, because in January of 1982, this is less than 7 years after the killing of Christie Mullins, Pam Newell, his wife that was with him that day, files for divorce. Now, about a month later, in February, his wife, Pam Newell, is found dead in her apartment, the result of a barbiturate overdose, and there is a suicide note found by her side.
Okay.
Which, I mean, strange, because
strange because we just covered, you know, a possible suicide case.
And now Knoll is the number one suspect in this killing. And
well, it's not a killing. I mean, it's technically
in Christie Mullins' death.
Oh, right. Okay.
And who was the one person that would have known for sure if she was with Henry Knoll or not?
Pam.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, there is this picture. You might be able to find it at columbusmonthly.com. I'm sure you can find it somewhere on the internet. But there is a picture of Henry Knoll at the crime scene where he's talking to police and he's telling them what he witnessed and what he saw. And he's crouched down and he's kind of like pointing at the ground and looking at the ground. And his wife, Pamela, is 5-6 feet from him. Right. And she's crouched down as well. And she is, and you know, they say a picture says 1,000 words. The look on her face when she's looking at her husband,
right?
The look on her face is almost like she doesn't believe a word he says, or why are you making me lie for you? It's just a disgusted look on her face.
Yeah, because I wonder if she saw any of Christie, because I think that would be enough to, you know, definitely an emotional reaction that happens there. And if you know, like if you're not for certain if he did it or not, you know, you could be looking at him just going, what are you, a fucking animal?
Well, what I'm thinking is that he probably came home without a shirt on.
Right.
And he asked his wife to go for a walk in the woods. I mean, I can't. Does he come home without a shirt on?
No, I think he tells her after the fact. I think whatever goes down between him and Christie goes down, and then for whatever reason, maybe he thinks somebody saw him, and so he goes running to Woolco which that doesn't make any sense either. Anyways,
no, but that's the thing about this case. There's so much shit that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And how does do you blame Pamela? Do you blame the wife?
No, because if she wasn't there, if she doesn't know, and then, you know, he's the one that finds this body.
No, but what I mean is she knows whether or not she was with him in the woods.
Right.
When he said he heard screams and went running off. And then
but it's her husband, so I could see her just going, look, it's a little white lie. No, I wasn't with him. I was just a little bit farther away. And then, you know, but that's the thing. Why would he go to Woolco? Why wouldn't he just run home? Because if he ran home, he could then just tell his wife, I was walking in the woods and I found this girl. Mm-hmm. The same story applies, and I saw this guy. And then you call the police from there. But maybe he knows that if he goes home, that he has to call police. I don't know.
Or again, though, my first reaction would be, he states that his wife and daughter were in the woods with him. My first reaction would have been to run to my wife and daughter to locate them and then go for help. That's what I would have done.
I don't know. I think there's a part of me that thinks that I would have ran after the guy if there was a guy. You know, but who knows? So Pam ends up committing suicide, possibly, in quotations.
That's what it's, that's what everybody says, but I'm sure there's plenty of rumor to the contrary.
Well, this is also 75, so the other thing too is I don't know if she's working at the time, and maybe it's just a one income family, right? And so there would be another motivation for her to go with his story. Well, he's the breadwinner. He's bringing home everything. He's taking care of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, if he goes away, then what the hell,
Well, Christie Mullins' family would continue to fight for justice for their daughter, for their sister, for their, and their father, Norman Mullins, was of the belief that Henry Newell was the person they should be looking at all along.
Right.
And he begged and bothered and poked at the police department to continue to investigate this, to look at Newell. And the other thing here is they just kind of swept it under the rug for a while. I think what they were doing was they were ignoring their mistake, that they were refusing to put a spotlight back on something that they had done wrong.
Well, the problem too, though, is that you have an eyewitness, and he's claiming, one, I touched the murder weapon. So really, you get fingerprints. Oh, well, he covered his story there. And then he put his shirt on top. My argument with that is if you have the shirt, it's a big difference of you laying your shirt on a bloody body or splatter coming at you. And I know that forensics was different back in the day, but I'm sure they could have saw splatter and went. And one thing that I find really interesting is the trial of Jack Carmen. The jury believed that the witness was the murderer. I thought that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was kind of the general consensus among the citizens of the area at the time too.
So then Pam passes away, alleged suicide, and then where does this story go from here?
Well, unfortunately, in April of 2006, Norman Mullins, he's the father of Christie Mullins, who was still fighting for justice for his daughter, he passes away at the age of 72. In September of 2013, Henry Newell Jr., he dies at the age of 63 from cancer.
Yeah, and you can find his obituary online, and there's not much written about him. He did get remarried. He was married for about 16 years to his, in quotation, loving wife. And it just kind of listed his kids, grandkids, and step-grandchildren.
Yeah, around that same time, John Oler, he begins researching the Mullins murder case. He wants to write a book about it. And he thinks that this is going to be a lengthy book. He was going to look into the investigation and try to get another investigation going here. What he does is he ends up contacting the two gentlemen that wrote for the Lantern back in 1975. And he ends up getting all of their old notes, all of their interviews, and every bit of evidence that they collected along the way. He gets that from those guys. And he's not digging into it too terribly far until he realizes this is no longer a book project. This is more about finding the real murderer. And what was going to be a full-length book that you would see on the shelves everywhere ends up becoming an e-book. Something very important takes place in 2014. In May, the Columbus police agree to review the 40-year-old murder case of Christie Mullins. Now, this takes place. Now, keep in mind, the Mullins family had begged the police to look into this for almost 40 years, and they got little to no help in a new investigation of this case.
And this is another pet peeve. So just let me jump on the soapbox real quick. We're very quick to be like, hey, let's close this case. Let's get justice right away, as much as we can. So much that we'll take a mentally handicapped guy, put him in a room and interrogate him and get a false confession. Mm-hmm. But then after they lose the case, it's like they sit on their fucking hands and don't open up any of these cold cases. It just sits there. So it seems so asinine to just sit. At the beginning, it's rush, rush, rush. And then after that, it's kind of like hush, hush, hush. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that was that they had little to no evidence for any other suspect. I mean, they had no evidence on Jack Carmen, who they took to court. And furthermore, just a couple years after the murder, the area was bulldozed over because they were building up that area at the time.
Well, yeah, they built 315 North.
Yeah, so any additional stuff that they were hoping to find or to conduct any kind of surveys or anything like that in the area, they had lost the opportunity for that. Now, it wasn't Oler, it wasn't the author that was able to get the police to agree to review the 40-year-old murder. He actually said that he got involved and tried to get them involved, and he got the same runaround that the Mullins family had got. It was only after the Clintonville Area Commission had requested the police look into this again. Now,
and sometimes what happens is you get new detectives and guys that were younger coming up. They hear about this injustice and they sink their teeth into it.
Yeah, because the Clintonville Area Commission has no authority to make the police reopen the case or to look into it further. It's just at their request. Mm-hmm. Now, the current police department granted that request, and their cold case squad reviewed the case, and it took them about a year, maybe 2 years, and they come out in 2015, November 6th, and the Columbus Police Department announced that Henry Knoll killed Christie Mullins more than 40 years earlier, and they rule the case solved and closed. And they
and one of the reasons
go ahead.
One of the reasons they did that too was one of Henry Knoll's nieces came forward and said, "Look, this has been a family secret for years, or at least family suspected him of doing this." And supposedly he confessed to her.
He confessed, according to the family, he confessed to her and at least one other family member, stating that he had taken the girl into the woods or got her to go into the woods with him, and
he made a move.
He was going to rape her. It never got that far. Things got out of control, and he killed her.
Well, and I don't even know if it just happened that way. I mean, it could be as simple as I just want to. I'm not simple, but his motive could have been interested in younger girls, and what he said to the niece was that he made a move, and then she didn't react the way he wanted her to, and then that's when things escalated. That doesn't make him any less of a fucking dirtbag. He's a dirtbag, period.
Yeah, and we do got to be clear. I mean, obviously he had died before they make this announcement. And what I was trying to say, Captain, beforehand was that the police did offer a full apology to the Mullins family for their slip up, and they called their work 40 years ago shoddy at best. But
right.
You can't try a guy who's dead. And I guess it's easy to say that he did it and they closed the case. And there is, to be honest with you, there is not a ton of evidence that he did do it. However, what police can say is that they had enough that if he were still alive, he would be indicted and he would be tried for that murder.
Yeah, and so here's what I find frustrating. So that's 2015, and the case is closed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Case is closed, my friend. No, not so fast. 2016, the police discover that there's a new technology out there. That technology is called Global Filer. And basically what this is, it's a different way to test DNA. And what this Global Filer works best on is old DNA, or possibly not really contaminated, but
deteriorated DNA.
Exactly. And so they have this new test, and this is now in 2016. They will not discuss what item they're testing. So we don't know if they're testing the shirt or the 2x4, if there's something else at the scene. The cops will not talk about what item will be being tested. Now, they did say, because the case is technically closed, that this could take anywhere from 6 months to possibly even 2 years, which is a little ridiculous. Like,
so they're saying that if the case were open, it would be a more expedited.
And I'm not for sure on that. It might just be that this global filer DNA testing, maybe it takes longer.
It's new technology.
Right. And there's a, kind of a chain of command. Obviously, if things are set to go to trial, they need to have those DNA tested. I mean, who knows how backed up they are. I mean, this world is going to hell in a handbasket real quick.
But as said, I don't know exactly what that evidence is, but I do believe if they're saying we have enough evidence that if he were still alive today, he would be on trial for that murder.
And these are the same people that put Jack Carmen on trial.
Well, not the same people. The same department.
Right, the same department.
The same department 40 years later.
So hopefully, if we get an update on what this DNA test come out, we'll update everybody once we know information on it.
And one thing that's obvious here, though, is, 40 years ago, police believed that 3 people were at the crime scene. Henry Knoll, Jack Carmen, and Christie Mullins.
Yeah.
And we only think that they only thought Jack Carmen was there because of Henry Knoll. And Henry Knoll pointed at him in a lineup and said, that's definitely the guy that was there. Well, they prove he was definitely not there. Right. So that leaves 2 people at that crime scene.
Well, it's definitely interesting. It definitely has some twists and turns to it. It's a case I've never heard of. I do like covering the cases that are lesser known. You have to really kind of dig deep for the information. So do we have a recommended reading for the week?
Well, yes, we do. But real quick before we get to that, this was a case that kind of blew my top because, seldom I came across this case about 4 or 5 years ago and looked into it. And then, it goes away and you look into it a little bit later. You read up on it. But the strange thing here is seldom do you review a cold case or stumble across a cold case and then there's an actual outcome. Usually these things just sit there and continue to be cold forever. So our hats should be off to the author, to the gentleman that worked at the Lantern, and way back 40 years ago to the people of Sharon Township that got together and said, no, Jack Carmen didn't do this, and you got to get him out, and we got to figure out who did this. So there was a lot of people that had a hand in this to find justice, whether it be after the perpetrator was dead, but at least justice was found at the end of the day. So we got to give
don't speak too soon because
we will wait for the captain to update us on the DNA.
Yeah, put that on my shoulders.
But you asked about recommended reading. Yes, of
sir.
course we have one, and this week we are featuring Life After Death. This is by Damien Echols. You may know him as the one of the members of the West Memphis 3. He was the so-called devil worshiper. This is his book that he wrote and released after he was released from prison, and it talks a little bit about the case, but it mainly discusses his time in prison and things he witnessed and experienced there. It does also go quite a bit into his childhood, which was very insightful. I recommend this one highly. Life After Death by Damien Echols. You can get that through our website, truecrimegarage.com. Click on the Amazon banner and pick that up today. So until next time, be good, be kind, and don't litter.
True crime podcasts. There is no shortage to consume, and if you're like me, you've consumed them all. I'm Ashley Flowers, creator and host of the #1 true crime podcast, Crime Junkie. Every Monday, we cover a case in a way that's not like you've heard before, because I have built a one-of-a-kind team of investigative journalists dedicated to conducting original reporting, making sure that you get the inside scoop. Listen to hundreds of Crime Junkie episodes now, wherever you get your podcasts.